And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the Dragons and Demon Podcast with host Kevin Perry, the podcast about real motivation.
All right, we are back, episode 25 here, Dragons and Demons. You can follow us, like, share, and do all the things to get us more notification, get us out there a little bit more. I think some of the people we interview have a great message, so we're going to continue that trend. Today, I bring on a great friend, former teammate of mine, and good friend for a long time now. I bring on Don Thompson. How you doing today, Don?
I'm doing okay. Thanks for having me, Kevin. I appreciate it.
So we've already talked a little bit, just kind of catching up, but Don's always been someone who, no matter how far apart we are physically, no matter how long it's been since we've talked, it always feels like we can just pick up the phone and get back to it. So it's been great having you close, and we'll get into it. So as we get started here, give us a little bit about your background and some introduction to you.
Sure. I'm pretty simple, and I'm married. I got two little ones, 8 and 4, and we talked a little bit about them earlier here prior to this, but they are just they keep us going. It's always a good time, and they're both into sports, and it's just I really enjoy fatherhood, and I think that's kind of becoming more and more who I am, like, defined. The more and more they get into things, and just I really enjoy it. And there's times where I've got to really go, what am I doing for myself? And not in a cynical way either, but it's always just like, it's a really good balance. So, I'm married to Kara, who went to school with us. We've been married for, I don't want to get this wrong, 10-year anniversary is this year, because I think your anniversary and ours are only about 2 or 3 weeks apart. Right. So if memory serves. So we're based just north of Columbus, Ohio. That was a move from Florida, which was a move from Pennsylvania. So it's been a journey, not only of growth, but it's also been a journey geographically. And each one of those moves has come with maybe a career move at the same time. So, but yeah, you and I kind of connected maybe freshman year at Millersville. Played football, and then as you kind of moved more and more into that bodybuilding and powerlifting arena, I was kind of like, that's kind of fun. I want to lift weights all the time. And I think there for a while, it's probably a span of maybe 3 or 4 years. It was, you and I were in the gym probably 5 or 6 times a week, so.
Yeah, like you said, we met in college football, and you were a pretty good player coming out of high school and heading into college. What was briefly run through your high school experience for football?
Played for Columbia High School, just there in South Central.
School, right?
Yeah, I think my graduating class might have been 100. The town of Columbia, it's a borough, which is maybe bigger than a village, but not quite certainly not it's more of a town, not much of a city, but about 10,000 people live there. But yeah, played linebacker, played tight end, and in junior high and growing up, I was a lineman. I was a D-line, O-line, D-line, and then I think just kind of transitioned. I was if you talk to anybody that grew up with me, I was more of a late bloomer athletically. Like, the running joke is that I still haven't peaked, but when I was 13, 14, I was okay, but it's really maybe the end of my junior and like beginning of my senior years where I really transitioned into what I call a key productive player in probably any of the sports that I played. Played football, basketball, baseball. So it was always year round. And, I see that as the kids start to play sports, I'm like, was that too much? Was that enough? Do I want them to go season to season to season? And, I look back on that and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed, the transition. I enjoyed kind of changing weight a little bit between, the football field and the basketball court. And just the other thing you do there is, I still talk to many of those teammates all the time. And, I'm probably 400 miles away from them, but that really built a strong bond for me and the guys I grew up with. And a lot of it started because, we were playing sports together in one season to the next one, to the next one. So high school was fun. When I got to college, I don't want to start with a regret, but I would do things differently academically and athletically. I think when I got to Millersville, I never looked at it like wow, I get to continue playing football. Like not a thing that a lot of people do. I got there and I was like, of course I'm playing. I was the 18-year-old, way overconfident, and it was like, and I think I took that attitude a little bit with some of the workouts and things like that. So that was looking back now, it's just like you've matured so much, even mentally, to go, yeah, I would skip here and there. And I took maybe not shortcuts, but I would certainly today take a much different approach to that entire concept,
Right.
playing football, and then certainly academically. I think first semester freshman year was rough for me, and it wasn't because I had a lot of freedom and I didn't understand what it was like for that. It was a lot more. I just didn't think it was important. I'd skip classes when there was a quiz or a test, and then wonder, why am I not doing well? Well, you got to show up, and that mentality, just showing up is such a key element for me. And then the rest of it, you just drive the details to get things done. So that's a little bit maybe on the high school front. And, I reference those guys I grew up with, and I think you got the chance to meet some of them, here and there. And, just a real good group of guys.
Right. We have a similar high school story. To just lean on the people that are close to you, and those bonds, they last forever. And they're not as, like, my wife and her best friend talk like every day. And
Yeah.
maybe I don't talk to my best friends every day, and I don't talk to the same people every day. But again, just like having a conversation with you, man, it could be 3 months and it's just a text message, and then we're right back at it. So it's tight relationships that kind of never grow away, but it's not the same as you get older and you move out and you move across the state or a couple hours away, and you kind of lose touch. But again, the tighter the relationship, the stronger that bond is once you reconnect. So I had Jake Bennett on a few weeks ago. We were talking some high school football and the transition stuff there. So that was an interesting conversation, because him and I have very similar stories as well, as far as we were both cut and we didn't have the greatest experience. So when we walked in the door at Millersville that first year, we were shocked and amazed, and we continued to be shocked and surprised as the process went on, because we were like, this is not what we expected. So what was that like for you as a true freshman going into college at Millersville?
It was the game is faster, right? And coming from a small, I think the way the Lancaster Lebanon League used to do it, there were 4 sections, at least locally for us. And it was split. Section 1 were the big schools like McCaskey High School in Lancaster, or Wilson, or Reading. I can't remember if Reading was in there. They might have been Berks County, but the larger schools, Penn Manor was a Section 1. Columbia is Section 4. So we always had this kind of, even through some of the, the all-star games and talking to, Jeff Hess, shout out from a Penn Manor grad standpoint. He's like,
Right.
It's Section 4. It's a completely different game. And I was like, I understand that to some extent, but I mean, you're still playing high school football.
Right.
When we got to Millersville, I think I had my own, thought process on, I think the year before we got there, Millersville had gone either 2-8 or 3-7. And it was like, they celebrated those 3 wins.
Right.
And, I had come from my background, at least in high school, was you win more games than you lose. And that was the expectation out of the gate. So I think for me, adjusting to the speed and like kind of being vulnerable as an 18-year-old of like, I'm not that good, or this is, I have some work to do. Strength, speed, it's all different. That was probably those first couple of weeks of camp. I didn't really put 2 and 2 together of like, why is this so different? Right? It's the same thing I've been doing since I was, a little kid. But that for me, the speed of the game, and then it's also, how do you prioritize all those things? And I remember being so annoyed. I think you remember freshman year, we had mandatory study hall. And I think it was like 20 hours a week after practice or during games. We had to go to I think it was Jefferson Hall. We had to go sit in mandatory study hall. And I was so resistant to that, because you have all this freedom and you're in control. And it's like, why would I need to do that? I today would welcome a mandatory study hall if I could go back and do it again, because it just makes so much more sense. So
Right.
it was a little bit of just trying to best understand all the different priorities and all the things that are hitting you as an 18-year-old going to school. I think I was still working at the time and playing football. It was just, I didn't see it as a big deal. And today I'm like, how did I even do some of that? But the speed of the game and, the increase in skill, I think I wasn't necessarily expecting. Part of that was, well, Millersville wasn't 10-0, so how good could this team be?
Right.
As cocky 18-year-old.
Yeah, we were all just working to get out of study hall because if you had a certain GPA, you got to leave study hall. You didn't have to remain in it the whole year. So all of us freshmen were just in there every night, mandatory. And we were like, man, how do we just get out of this? I just don't want to have to come back here every night. And then probably like a year later, it was like, man, I wish I could go back to study hall. I wish I could force myself to do some of this work.
Absolutely.
So when Jake and I were talking, we were talking just about how big our freshman class was originally. You remember how big that group was when we first started in that visiting locker room? Like 45
Yes.
kids. And by the time camp started, it was like 20, 25. And then by the time the season ended, there was like 15 of us left. And then rolling into the spring, by the end of spring, there was like 8. And then following that year, there was like 6 of us left.
Absolutely. I remember that. I remember also, like, out of those 45, like, there were like 20 linebackers. It was just so heavy. It was so heavily weighted on defense. There were probably like 3 or 4 running backs. I remember.
And by the end of the season, they had like 2 or 3 true freshmen starting at linebacker. Like, it was crazy to see, and they were converting kids. We had 20 something in that freshman class, and some of them never played. Some of them were first year starters, and some kids they were converting because they were so desperate. So many kids got ran out of there. It was interesting. But as kids started leaving and quitting and moving on, it was like, and I'm a little jealous. Like, I wish I had my freedom back, but we were so, and again, you were the same mentality as me, where it's like, I have to be here. Like, I'm jealous. I want to go be free. I want to go party with the rest of the college kids, but I have to be in football. This is what I set my mind to. And I wasn't getting any money for it. I wasn't like, no one was forcing me to stay there, but it was like, I have to be here. This is what I told myself I was going to do.
Yeah. And I remember, even out of that whole experience, I remember being so happy on Mondays, right? Because Monday was your day off. You didn't have to do any. I mean, I think there was maybe some optional lifts. You could lift on Monday if you wanted to, but there was no practice. There was nothing going on. There was no study hall, no meetings. You just had Monday to yourself, and it was like, I would compare that Monday to what everybody else had, 5 days a week. It was like you were much more in control of your time. But at the same time, it's not all bad. I enjoyed, what I'll call the grind of getting up, morning lifts. And I remember, I think specifically it was you and I, and there were a couple other individuals, but we would go to morning workouts together. And to this day, I think I'm better, but I remember it'd be like, we'd have to be there at 5 and be like 4:56. You guys are texting me like, are you coming or not? Because we're about to leave. And I'd be like, yeah, I'm on my way out, as I crawl out of bed and get dressed. And then, like, we're all but late.
You're just getting up.
Yeah. I'll be out there. Yeah, I'm coming down the elevator right now. I'm not dressed, still in bed, top bunk. It was hilarious.
There were times that we had to leave you because we were like, we can't be late. And you'd come running to the door at the weight room and you'd pop up and you'd be like, oh, we made it.
Yeah. I remember very vividly those, and now, I enjoy getting up and doing stuff early. I enjoy working out first thing in the morning. It sets the stage for the day. You almost have to get to that mentality where, you gotta make it be organic, right? You got to organically find out that there's something wrong with getting up at 4:30 or 5. And
I didn't hate it then. It was fun to get up when everybody else was sleeping. And I mean, it was miserable to get up, and depending on what you did the night before, everyone kind of suffered through it. But it was fun to get up and work with the guys on the team and be in there and watching people sweat and watching people not quite awake, not making certain lifts or missing certain jumps or doing things. And then we'd have days where we'd be out on the turf doing workouts, and you have like Cardoza going to character and be pretending to be a Spartan or something. And then the other days where other players are just throwing up at the sight of running and not necessarily actually working out. And then the days where we'd play dodgeball or do some goofy stuff, it was like, and these experiences are stuff that, like, a normal college kid, yeah, we could go out and watch someone drink a bunch of booze and get all liquored up and trip on themselves on the way out. But these experiences are unique to us. So living in the moment, man, it was a good time.
It was. I wouldn't trade it. Probably do things differently, but I mean, who wouldn't?
Right. Do you still have scars on your shin from those high box jumps?
Not that I'm aware of, but I remember there was always a casualty, right? Whether it was somebody who didn't quite get up on it and they just filleted their shin,
Right.
or they jumped on one of the skinnier ones, but their momentum was too far right or too far left. So they go one way and the box goes the other way and you just land on top of it. Yeah.
Oh man,
I remember
some of the lessons that I learned bring into me with being a head football coach was like, all right, well, we can control that. We're not doing box jumps on a 48-inch box with a 45-pound plate in somebody's hand, because we did have one kid get stitches, but that was like a 16-inch box and it wasn't weight. And it was like, if you can't make that, I don't know what to do with to help you. So,
I remember the German volume training we did. I think it was 10 sets of 10, right? Whatever the main lift was, we're going to do 10
February's, right?
Yeah. And I remember just being, as we did legs on Monday, upper body Tuesday, and then legs again on Wednesday, which is the worst day to do anything 2 days after you squat. And they're just like, yeah, you're supposed to be a little sore. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to, I'm going to cut this weight in half because my legs are falling apart. This is terrible. But, I do appreciate you didn't have the opportunity to quit, right? There was somebody, Coach Rankin standing in your face saying, you're going to do this, right? You're going to be an athlete. And I don't care what you did last night. I don't care about any of that. This is what you're doing right now. And if you don't think you're going to, I'm going to stand here and stare at you 6 inches away from your face while you're doing it. So I always appreciated the accountability that his whole presence would kind of push us all on.
Right, because we'd have coaches that'd be up at that time too, screaming and yelling like it was 6 p.m. Like, I don't know where they got the energy. I mean, I figured it out as a coach how to take naps and how to fake it and how to dose up on caffeine and get in there. And it was 5 o'clock in the morning. That's tough.
You just said fake it, and I can hear Coach Colby. I don't care if you want to be here or not. You're going to pretend to. And, you would just get so into like sarcastically screaming or like just, I'm going to be annoying because he's telling me to get excited and yell and really be in the moment. And he was right. You jump around like trying to be funny, but also trying to push. It's like, all right, yeah. You shake off
the people around you and you start to like, this is kind of real.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a great mentality to have, whether you're, doing 2-a-days or you're up at 5 a.m. or just, on those off days. I've had that thought where, there's I don't know who it is, but there's a quote out there that's like, if you only do things when you feel like doing them, you're not going to get anything done. Right. So it goes back to that. Like there's an element of just, personal growth and getting things done and execution where you're forcing yourself to do some stuff sometimes, but you always feel better on the outside or the other end of that.
Yeah. Some of those lessons. And again, we weren't the greatest program, but some of those lessons on like, we were 1-5, 1-6 when Colby said if you don't got it today, then fake it speech. And I can't tell you how many times I used that as a high school football coach when we're 1-6, 1-7. I remember we had a lacrosse season because I was head lacrosse coach for a couple of years. We were terrible, and the teams around us were really stacked against us. And I was like, you know what? We're going to do a new workout, a new pre-game warm-up routine. And they were like, what's that? And I was like, it's going to sound crazy, but bear with me, because we practiced on the turf, and around us was the track, and we were like walking on as girls lacrosse was walking off. So there was a lot of people there. I was like, I want complaints from the neighborhood, from the community, from the other teams. I want complaints. And they're like, about what? And I was like, I want you to scream and be as loud and obnoxious as possible during warm-ups. I just like, we can spark our energy there. If you don't have it, fake it. And if someone else is being louder than you, you got to beat them. And we just did that for the second half of the season. And I don't think we won any more games, but they had a lot more fun. Practices got a lot more intense. And it was a thing that we learned from being terrible at Millersville that I was like, we need to take that with us. We need to take that and use it to our advantage. And we got more competitive, but again, the kids had a good experience and they had something to bond over, and the following year was going to be a great year for us.
Yeah, just you can't fake it for very long either, right? So you fake it, it's funny, and you just kind of move on, and it gives you some level of interest or engagement. It's just I think I do it throughout the day. I like get up, going to work. I'm like, it's going to be the greatest, like slapping the steering wheel, music up all the way. Like, and that's not maybe a comment about my career, my job. I'm more than happy, more than satisfied. But like, there's days where I'm like, rather be doing anything else on earth than, heading into work. So, but it works in your personal life as well.
Yeah. So back to, again, I think we have kind of similar stories. So I didn't know much about you and your background coming into it, but I've heard rumors and and you've talked a little bit about it, but you lost both your parents when you were in high school, correct?
I lost my dad in high school about a week before our senior year started. Um, and lost my mom when I was 12. She had chronic renal failure, so her kidneys went bad when I was about two and a half. So she was on dialysis, and pretty good battle. But as a result of that, there were some additional health complications that she ended up passing when I was in sixth grade. So that was it's an extremely unique experience. And I know you prefaced a little, I was like, well, I kind of understand, but we haven't talked a whole lot about it. And it's one of those things that, again, as an adult now, hyper aware of how guarded I am about even talking about some of that stuff. So, and as far as today goes, I'm happy to share. I think I create a barrier around that even internally to, like, how often I think about that or how often I use those things are not few and far between, but I'm very protected because I think emotionally to, go back, and I'm sure you have some of this as well. It's like you start missing them, right? Right. You start going through a couple thoughts and you're like, so what I do know is that, when I lost my mom in '02, she had been sick for a while, and it wasn't, when you're 12, you can process things to a certain extent, but I don't know if I fully understood and grasped the concept. But from what I remember from her, and just growing up, I had a great childhood, even, all the way up. I was a happy kid all the time. But I remember, what's very interesting. My mom and my dad were very contrast, they were very opposites. I think even to some extent, Kara and I are very opposites as well. So we complement each other. We fill the gaps, if you will. But I got a really good balance of, different parenting styles, and they themselves had extremely different backgrounds as well. So their life experience, my parents had children older. So my mom was 33 when she had me, and my dad was 40. So, you're talking about individuals that grew up in the 50s and 60s. So I always go back, and the running thing I say to people is, like, I'm old school. I like pen and paper. I like this. I like, they're like, you don't know what a cassette tape is. And I was like, I know what an 8-track is. Don't get me started. But through those things, I'll give you both examples, or I'll give you both situations kind of in one. I had a really good support system of family and a good support system of friends. And certainly, I have a sister. She's 4 years older than me, and she was there too, especially I was a 12-year-old kid trying to process this, and she was 16 at the time. But they're life lessons that teach you that things happen, and the only thing that I think maybe is one takeaway, or you have a hyper awareness of how mortal all of us are, and mortality is real. So in the simplest sense, and I don't mean to take any emotion out of this, is like we're mortals, right? We are people pass, and it's one of those things. But growing up, I just go back to the family and friends thing, and I'll reference that small little river town of Columbia. There was a lot of rallying. There was many opportunities for me to maybe take a different path, or fall to my knees and not give up, or give up and not keep going, and those sorts of things. So between the two of those two early life events, you grow up really quick. And even some of the things I've referenced of, like, when I was 18, I didn't know any better, but you learn how to kind of do things for yourself. You learn that, not everybody's always going to be around, but I do have to give credit. I have an aunt and an uncle on my mom's side that lived in Columbia, and they did a lot for me, essentially to make sure I didn't steer off the path or I didn't do something. I had a grandmother as well. So I had a very strong support system through both of those. And again, I've got a bit of a man cave out in the garage, right? And at the very top of it's a big wooden sign that just says Columbia, because the town people, we were, I don't say well known, but we were known throughout the town. There was a lot of people in that town that went out of their way to do things and make sure that, I was well taken care of. And, I think about that stuff all the time.
Right.
So.
And again, similarly, man, it was the community that kind of kept me moving and kept me maturing and kept me growing. And I knew my dad was sick for 11 years. So we all kind of knew that day was coming. But so it was, and it's never easy, but it was easier for us because it was kind of like that relief at the end where it was like, man, he's suffering so much. It's actually good that like the suffering's over, and people say that, but it was real for us. And then just having all those people that didn't need to go out of their way because we had it pretty well under control. Again, our support system was great, but all these coaches and teachers and strangers and community members and just everyone who rallied for us was like, man, this is what it's all about. This is human nature at its finest. And in the world that we live in today, where politics and it's not a pretty sight on social media and things like that, man, you really want to rally around something like that. I'm a prime example of what that can turn someone into. And I just hope to try and return that favor as often as possible. And that's kind of why I led down the career path I'm in and why I coach for so long and why I'm in education is because of the impact it had on me. So.
Yeah, I think if I take anything away from kind of the experience of the overwhelming support in those situations when you're kind of at the center of it, especially being a young kid, is, there is compassion out there. There's people have compassion and they have understanding, and both of those things, I just, I can't thank the individuals that supported me enough, because there was more than enough, I think, fuel in the fire to just, go down a different path and maybe not be as successful or just be a completely different individual today.
It would have been understood. People would have gotten it, but at the same time, it was not our path.
Wasn't an option. Yeah.
All right. So do you want to talk a little bit about your dad?
Yeah, absolutely. So his name was actually Don Thompson as well. So I'm the third. So quite the legacy there. What I remember.
You said you're the third?
I am.
Anybody call you Trip?
No, I've been called a lot of things.
The third, so they call him Trip. And I know like 3 other people now that are named Trip.
Yeah, no, I've never been Trip. I think I was Donnie. And it's funny because when we go home or we go back to Pennsylvania, and we'll see a lot of the people I grew up with, and my daughter's just like, Donnie, like she'll make jokes about it because it's just such a foreign concept to her. She's like, why do they call you that? And I'm like, that's who I used to be. But so yeah, when I was, it was probably, I think it was the summer before my senior year. My dad, he was involved in an accident. He fell down some stairs backwards and actually hit his head. So, 12 to 16 hours after that, they're like, he's going to be fine, just needs to rest up. And then, he ended up going into a coma, and he stayed like that until he eventually passed about August 20th, 2007. So from the onset, after that accident, there was not a lot of good news associated with any kind of recovery. So, I think for me, I remember what I got from, I was just about to turn 18. So I was 17 years old. And yeah, the interesting thing is, like, when you turn 17, 18, 19, I think in those early years, that's when you kind of become friends with your parents. I don't say friends, but you get to see them through the eyes of an adult. So I kind of, there's moments I feel as though that's an opportunity I missed out on. But, being 17 years old, and, at the time it was just him and I. My sister was off at college. There was a lot of bonding, and I could start to see that of, while he was still my dad, he was, slowly becoming my best friend. You're living together, you're playing sports. He was an athlete growing up. So everything, any athletic thing that I've learned how to do, it's from, you know, um, nights and days and just hours and hours in the backyard throwing frisbee, baseball, basketball. Um, so all of that, being a fan of sports, all those things, I got from him. And then also, how to change a tire, how to tie a tie, all those things.
Old school.
Yeah, absolutely. All those things, luckily, I had the opportunity to kind of um, learn at least from and pack those memories, then also pass that down to my kids. But he was bigger than me, 6'3", and the thing that or 6 foot, getting 6'2.5", but I think so. I continued to look up to him, till he passed. But one of the things that I try, I think subconsciously to emulate is he was he was kind of a fan favorite among people that maybe he didn't even know. People would often gravitate to him. Very funny, good personality. But I remember growing up playing sports, and when it was a group full of parents, he was just very good at reading the room and maybe throwing a joke or things. And he's just very good to interact with. I always knew he knew how to talk to people, but very funny. I would watch people gravitate just as he would. I don't know if it's so much like command a room or anything like that, but it's to be able to converse and have dialogue with people that maybe just you don't know, right? You barely know somebody, but you can have a full blown conversation with them as if you know who they are. So there's moments where I wonder if I've taken any of that away. But
In my
you could
opinion, Apple and Tree Man, you're just like that.
I appreciate you saying so. It's just and it's all it's one of the better qualities. I just remember kind of watching and listening, and so that was a again unique experience, and had a lot support system after that happened. But I think at some point as a senior, I was just, this goes back into some of the Millersville discussion. I had put it in my head because of those two experiences that I was an adult and I was going to, I was, not only was I getting all the freedom of going to college, but like I already had a year under my belt of trying to figure it out by myself, which wasn't true. I had the support system, but I was, as a kid, you're like, well, because this happened to me, I am, ready to take on the world. I wasn't. I don't even think I am today. It's always it's a lot of fun. But, I think if I just maybe put a bow on all my memories of a kid and even, a teenager with my mom and my dad are just, for the most part, they're all very happy, so I don't go back. I think I was hypersensitive to some of the sympathy and some things. I never wanted to be somebody's charity case.
Right.
And, nobody ever sees it that way. But when you're a kid, you're like, am I taking advantage, or am I doing something? Do I get special treatment because this happened to me? So I always try to have some kind of hypersensitivity that I was going to have to be independent to some extent. I didn't want to rely on somebody else to help me. And that doesn't mean I didn't appreciate all of it, all the support. But I always wanted to ensure that I wasn't taking advantage of that as a result of those, those life events.
Yeah, I think we learn a lot about ourselves, and there's like the beginning of the journey kind of starts sooner for people who lose their parents or lose people close to them when they're at a very young age. I continue to grow and learn lessons, as I'm sure you do, from just thinking about things that happened with my dad and hearing old stories and watching old home videos, and like asking my brother and my sister about things, like the way they kind of see things, because we all kind of saw a different version of that whole chapter in our lives, where my sister was younger than me, my brother was older. My brother got to experience a lot more with my dad when he was healthy. I mean, I think just everyone has such a different perspective, and it just starts writing our book sooner than most of the other kids in our age who had both parents, had every opportunity. And not everybody does, and not everyone has both parents in their lives from the onset. Not everyone has that strong community sense that we have. So we were very advantaged there. And I saw a weird like dynamic as I grew up, and even in college, like there was a shift, and maybe you saw it in me, but it was like I came in to be a football player and that kind of left. So now I'm like trying to be a man. Like it was 0 to 60, and I was like no longer a football player. Now I'm a man. And I started distancing myself from people. I started like being more focused on work and different things. And was like, I just gonna need to get this degree, get a job, and get out of here. Like that's my approach. And again, not having many regrets, but if there were things that I would retool and do a little bit better, it might be with those things and enjoying the little things and keeping some friendships alive and things like that that I would focus on. Um, you want to talk about anything else, and then I want to roll into KPF days.
Roll right into it.
All right.
Absolutely.
So after I left high school football, unfortunately, I was cut from the team. Don kept playing, luckily for him. Um, I got a job at GNC, met a group of people that had a local gym up there in Mountain Joy, PA called KPF, Kendig Private Fitness. I started working out there. I went from having nothing where I was like a football only. And now I don't have football. So I found another community to join into. And I brought you along with me, and we went up there to KPF, and man, we had a lot of fun up there. So now we're bringing all of our football sense and all of our football training styles, and we're bringing it to that gym where we are adding some new twists to the things they're doing, and they're teaching us a lot of things. And it was a great community to be a part of. Very small. There was only like probably 6 or 10 of us that were there every day, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think about the early and later KPF days all the time, especially when I'm working out, because I've got this bar of, when we were going there, it was full blown supplement. Well, we were trying new supplements.
Right.
We were trying to figure out what workout was going to give us the edge, right? Is it, we weren't doing things like off the wall, but it was like, what if we try this for a couple weeks? Or what if we twist this lift? Or what if we do sumo deadlifts, right? Or what if it was almost like a lab, right? We were going to accomplish what we needed to, but then there was also an element of, I think I remember doing lunges with barbells out in the parking lot, like back and forth, just to mix it up. We've destroyed our quads to the point where like walking is maybe questionable. Let's go out in the parking lot and punish them even more. And it was almost as if like a friendly competition of like whoever punishes themselves the most in this weight room or in this gym is going to kind of win the workout to some extent, right? I remember putting workouts together. I remember, it was really and there was a lot of camaraderie there too. To your point, those early days, I don't know, 6 to 10 is probably a good call. Starting in the basement down there where it was just, I remember the basement and, the strip of carpet to squat on and all the things. But I think about that often because I think I've had, recently, if I do a workout, I always kind of compare it to, is it the same? It rarely is.
Right.
A, because we're much older, but B, I typically work out by myself. So it's not a situation where I have somebody that's kind of holding me accountable. So and you're always your biggest critic, right? So, oh, that workout was terrible, or I didn't do enough. But like those early days of KPF were a blast.
And
I
I
remember.
think in
Go ahead.
building and fitness in that world, man, there's nothing but self-made people. Yeah, there are people who have all kinds of money and trainers and opportunity and coaches and all that, but it's all your work that you show. And then someone like Dave, who had been bodybuilding for so long, the owner of that gym, he started that gym in a garage with a treadmill and a bench. Like to watch something grow into a basement where it was like, this is old school. This is kind of dirty and nasty. When it rains, there's 2 inches of water we lift in. Like it doesn't really matter. People are in here in boots anyway. And then we moved it upstairs and got a little nicer, a little classier. And we started seeing kind of a little bit more clientele. There were some younger kids coming to work out with mom and dad, and some more ladies from the neighborhood are showing up because it's a little higher quality. But it was like just watching that, and that was only in a couple of years. Watching that growth happen was like you get to watch yourself grow by looking in the mirror, seeing the weights change. You get to watch this business grow that we had no stake in, but we were like committed to it. That's kind of what's inspired me to stick with it and stay in the fitness kind of world. Is just there's nothing but you. Like, yes, I can have your help. I could have other people help me, people writing programs for me. But at the end of the day, no one's going to force me to do another rep. It's going to be me.
Yeah.
That place was unreal.
That's it's just a lot of foundationally everything I probably know outside of, you'll lift weights for a sport, but you're usually following a program, you're doing it in groups, and the intensity is there, but the variation and the changes, and when you move around something, like I just want to lift this 10 times and then I'm going to move through a workout, as a club versus I'm going to I'm going to try to lift 400 pounds, or I'm going to do this. I'm going to start with 50 reps today and see what happens. When you start looking at it from like, what's the physical change going to be, or how strong can I actually get? There's just that spider webs to me to so many other things from a knowledge and a routine and a habit standpoint. So
Right.
I also remember, as a 34-year-old, I don't know if I can envision a world where I'm drinking pre-workout at 9:30 p.m. for a 3-hour workout underneath a set of apartments. I think there were a couple instances where you and I were, working out at 10:30 or 11 p.m. and the neighbors came down and said, "Hey, can you at least turn down the music? I don't care that you're down there working out and smashing weights, but could you turn down the whatever we were playing on an iPod or a CD or whatever the case may be?" And we are like, "Of course." Always try to be cordial, but
Right.
when you're in the middle of an intense lift, you kind of forget that it's 11 p.m. and somebody's head's 3 feet away from where you're slamming that weight, trying to sleep.
Right. And we had 24-hour access to that gym, and we kind of just stuffed money in an envelope when we had the money for it. So it was kind of like we got special treatment there. That was nice, but we earned that. I mean, just by doing what we do and kind of putting on a show for the gym. And I mean, we worked very hard at it. So we were kind of showing them that love there just by being like, and I see it now with high school kids that I work with, man, like they come in and work their butts off. I'll give them what I have for free. Like, I don't even care. It's about the effort that they put in. And I think that's kind of what we brought to the table there.
Yeah. And Dave wasn't ever shy about sharing his knowledge or sharing, have you considered this or this technique? Or, especially, I mean, I think we had been working out there for maybe a year or two when you did your first show. And I don't know how involved Dave got, but even like just hearing conversations from him, I was always trying to like over listen or hear what he said and then try to apply it. It was you had it all in one there. You could lift, you had a bit of a brotherhood, and then also just the knowledge, right? If you wanted to know something about the world of bodybuilding, weightlifting, powerlifting, it was in there, and it was available to you, usually at no cost.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a lot of fun there. And some of the things that we got into, I mean, we had some big numbers there. Like we said, we moved that whole gym. And there was one time, and I'm not going to put any names out there, but there was a woman who was moving on from a relationship, and we were assigned to go to the house and move them out of there.
I remember there was a bit of a feud, right? And the individual wanted their stuff out, and the boyfriend or husband or whatever the case was unwilling to relinquish all of the things. I mean, furnitures, rugs, lamps, lights. I think even some of the light fixtures, I think we took off with a screwdriver. It
Right.
was a complete takeover. We showed up at 9 a.m. I think it was
Right.
you,
So they
me,
called the
Dylan.
local gym and they said, we need to get our stuff out of that house. So we went in and we got it.
Absolutely, we had a good time doing it.
Yeah, she gave us a list of things that we needed to retrieve. We brought it into a trailer and we got out of there.
It was I don't mean to laugh, but that was that whole thing. It was just like, "Hey, do you mind help move some furniture?" It's like, "Yeah." It's like the guy who has it doesn't want to give it to us. I was like, "All right, well, this got a lot more interesting." So yeah, it was.
Then we get there
It
and
was a
he's
good.
like, yeah, he's home. He's refusing to leave his room. Like,
And
so we need to.
he was yelling at us, I think, when we first got there, in the living room. And then we came in the living room, then he went back to the kitchen. And then we went into the kitchen, as the course of we're pulling stuff out. And then he's in the back bedroom with the door shut, still yelling at us. But, it was almost like a reverse magnet. Like the further we went into the home, the further he went back to, it was a very interesting experience, but a good time. And I think we were paid in protein bars and supplements at the
We were
time.
paid in a gym membership. It was all good there.
Yeah.
But we also had a lot of fun experimenting with different things as they came out from GNC. So, and I had a Dylan Hess on for an episode. We talked about the supplements of that era. So what were some of your favorites?
I let me pull back and remember.
While you're thinking about it, I'll remind everyone that supplements are so different now. And this is only what, 10 years ago?
Yeah.
And pre-workouts are totally different now. Like they were putting things in pre-workouts that they shouldn't have been. Now it's just like a balance of caffeine and trying to map out exactly how much one can take. But now they're even on the super low side of caffeine and trying to find some other herbal and natural things and messing out around with some little like mushroom based things that are helping with the neurotropic aspect of things in pre-workouts. But back then it was like, all right, how close can we get someone to dying or having a heart attack without actually having a heart attack? Like some of those pre-workouts were intense.
The same mentality or the same envisionment where I'm like, I drink a pre-workout at 9:30 at night to work out would probably apply like to picking up one of those supplements and like looking at them today, like, I wonder what that's going to do to my inside. There was no, it was like that FDA claim that they put on there is like, this is not a regulated substance by the FDA. We were just like, must be good to go, whatever. Better triple
Down the
scoop.
hatch.
If I go back, supplements that like jump out at me that, Jacked or Jack 3D, that original formula. Again, I don't remember the banned ingredient that was in it. I just remember that
3-dimethyl something. It was something so synthesized that was like, you shouldn't put this in your body. I was just
I
talking to
just
somebody about that yesterday. That was like the if you and it was a kid that is now like, I don't know, a semester or two away from being a nurse. He's like, if you look at the chemical compound for that ingredient, it's like unfair to the world that people were taking the stuff in. It's like, well,
and I remember it would either go on sale or there'd be some 2-for-1 deal at GNC, and it's just like, give me all of it. And then you're double scooping, and it's like we
triple scoop.
recommend is 1 scoop, and you're putting in 2 or 3 heaping scoops, and it's so that was I remember having the most intense workouts, or the at least I'll tell you that was my first experience with anything that had beta alanine in it. So on top of everything else, my skin was just absolutely on fire. So I was like, something has to be working, right? And if nothing else, I'm going to pick this up because it's going to distract the fact that I feel like I'm on fire.
Right.
I go back. What was I consistently taking? There was I can't remember who manufactures it, but Black Powder had an original formula too, and it wasn't real well known, but it was. I remember like grabbing my arms after a set and going like, "Why is my skin so tight? Like, what's happening here? This isn't something that I regularly have." So I remember that. Actually, anything that would you put in your shaker
MRI,
and the
MRI.
lid the lid blows off, right? I remember getting in the car. I think you picked me up at Gilbert Hall, and you're like, what took so long? And I'm like sticky. I was shaking this in the hallway, and it blew all over me because it was the first time. That was Black Powder.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jacked. That was probably. I don't remember when they took it off the market, but that was probably the number one for me. I remember. I'm trying to think. I can't remember when C4 kind of came onto the scene. I enjoyed that, but it wasn't anything that we had been, used to at that point. But it became I remember thinking like, should I be taking this every day? Because, when you're lifting 5 or 6, 7 times a day, it's like pre-workout just became necessary. And at the time I didn't drink coffee, but I do now as an adult. And I just wonder, is like all that caffeine, did I build a like forever tolerance where I need multiple cups of coffee in a single day on top of anything else that has caffeine in it?
Yeah, I don't drink coffee. I can't handle the taste, but I down like 2 or 3 monsters a day. Like peak end of the school year when I'm grinding, or peak football season when I'm like not sleeping. It's like, man, I need 3 monsters just to make it through the day. Um, I do take times where I kind of cycle off, but if I drop off, it's migraine season. I
Yeah.
can't just cold turkey it. I mean, that caffeine's a very addictive drug, so you really need to work your way down, or you're going to have some withdrawal and some side effects. So there's times over the summer when things are a little slower, I kind of wean myself off and I get very low. But I don't know how we survived. I mean, we really put ourselves through it then, and for all the trash talk people want to put out there and all the accusations that people want to put out there of. I mean, I know I got a bunch of shots taken at me for being on steroids when I was in college and in high school. It was like, nope, this is all caffeine. This is mostly caffeine and protein and some of the other things that we found on the shelves at GNC, which was all street legal. But
caffeine, protein, and some extreme genetics, I think, for you. I remember when we first started, I think we were still going to Miller's. I was like, why are you, I didn't ask it this way, but I was like, why are you so much stronger than me? I think I was like, how do you, he's like, it's really good genetics. And I was like, fair enough. And I think that was like, it's like, and that kind of piqued my interest, I think, even in like, hey, do you want to start working out? I'm like, well, absolutely. Let's do it. And yeah, I remember even the first time we went to KPF, I was like, I think this used to be Greer's Market, which it used to be a butcher shop. Because the house I grew up in Pennsylvania, it was about just over Kinderhook Road, so about 8 minutes south of there. Actually, I think it was after you had relocated to Maryland. Jeff Hess had started working out there, and there was a couple times where we actually ran to my house from KPF.
wow.
And yeah, well, it was running, stop to die, and walk for a little, and then run. It was kind of a fun walk situation, but it's only about 2.5 miles, so it wasn't like a major accomplishment. But we did that a couple times as well. Trying to think what else supplement wise. I remember in the thick of all that, KPF 6-7 times a week. I can't remember if you were still working at GNC, but somebody somewhere was like, you guys might want to check out this little grocery market called Save Mart. I think it's off of Fruitville Pike.
Well, it was because I was at GNC and everyone kept coming, do you price match? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, Save Mart. I was like, I don't know what that is. So no. And I was like, let's go there one time.
Yeah, we go there and there's this aisle of like brand new supplements that you wouldn't think would be in the
price of everywhere else in the world.
Yes. And I remember standing in those aisles several times where it's like, what's dark rage, dark matter, or I think there was a fat burner or a thermogenic called Diablo. And I think it had
ephedrine in it.
Straight ephedrine. And it was just like, not really concerned with the thermogenic component here, but I just want this in my system the next time I go to pick something up. Yeah, Save Mart.
I've heard that people died from this, so I need to try it.
Yes, see that mentality, that invincible mentality of like, how can I get a better lift in here? How can I increase these numbers? It was that was a lot of fun, and I went to Save Mart well into 2013, 2014. But so when I relocated to Florida, I think the last time I actually did a full blown workout at KPF was probably March or April of 2014, and I was still holding on to like I'm not buying supplements online. I'm going to Save Mart, right? I'll take a 20-minute drive down to save $40. That was a lot of fun. Save Mart. I forgot all about that place until we just started talking through some of that.
Yeah, so we bonded through football. We bonded through the gym at KPF. We always tried our supplements, but now we're 34 and we're pushing it. And I'm still locked into the fitness world. I think you're still getting your workouts in whenever you can. If you're not between practices with your kids, my kids aren't quite into the competitive sports as much, so I can be a little selfish with my time. But how do you kind of keep it going? How do you keep motivated? How do you keep pushing yourself through the little things and the big things?
So for me, it's I always, to be successful in this or with a workout, I have to be routine and I can't miss. And not only can I not miss a day, taking days off certainly, but I have to give myself no reason to detract from what I want to do. Right. So when I'm on it, and as even right now, I'm kind of on the cusp of coming back and working out much more frequently with, and it's like easing into the level of intensity that I don't want to say we once had, but at least in that direction. For me, if I'm going to get up and work out, if I'm going to work out during the week, it's got to be before work or on the way to work. But when I tell you, like, I can't have anything that's going to be like, don't work out today, right? Because that voice is always there. The alarm's got to be set. The shoes have to be next to the bed. Got to sleep in the outfit I'm working out in. gym bag, work bag, whatever is going with me needs to be in the car. I mean, to the extent where I used to actually put my car in the garage and put the key in the ignition. And so that I was like, I'm putting my shoes on, grabbing my shaker, grabbing my water, coffee, whatever is out has to be there. And I'm getting in the car. So, um, I haven't been doing it lately. But that's the thing of, if one little thing goes sideways, I have a moment where I'm like, do I really need to work out today? Do I need to? So that is a constant battle, right? And even my brain will play tricks on me of like, you know what? The sun's out. You should get the pools. Get the pools out for the kids and let them play. And why don't you open up a beer or two and just sit down and relax versus it's leg day. It's like, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll just hit some weights in the garage, or I'll do something in the driveway a little bit later. And then like later doesn't come, right?
Right.
So I have to preload. And a lot of what helps that is remembering how successful or how productive of a day I have when I do that, right? When you do that, the mental clarity, the drive to go, I did that already. All these other, I don't have any. I think it's called like task paralysis, where you have something that you need to do, and you're just like, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. I'll get to it. So I am a big time procrastinator. I almost need a deadline to be like, I need to get this done or something's going to go wrong. So when I can have that routine and take away all those decisions, it's like, I didn't put the pre-workout in the shaker. That's going to take an extra 2 minutes. I might as well just take the day off. So when you can tackle those internal dialogue conversations and kind of remember why you're doing it, it helps. But that's, for me, it's like, it's got to be routine, and there's got to be no question or no speed bumps, because I become a victim when it's like, oh man, you know what? I didn't pack my gym bag, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. So I might as well just wash the whole day. Right. There's a reference out there. It's like, if you drop your phone, and you crack your screen, you don't just throw the phone in the trash, right? You keep using it. So like, if you have a misstep at some point, you continue, right? And you keep going, you keep doing what you're supposed to do versus getting hung up on the, whatever it was, whatever the initial obstacle was. So for me, when it comes to barriers to motivation or barriers to being on it all the time, it's ensuring that I'm basically playing chess with myself, right? I'm not allowing the voice of comfort to grab me and say, yeah, you don't feel like working out today. So
My favorite analogy is actually Kevin James on Joe Rogan, where he said, you get a flat tire, what are you going to do? You're going to pop the other three because you're mad at yourself? It's like, well,
that's really good.
Makes really good sense. I'm going to fix that tire and get back on track. No, I think some of the greatest feelings, that the greatest high that I've achieved recently is like, and really, I was talking about this the other day, like hard work is incredible. It's a great feeling. So after you do a bunch of work in the yard, or after you've had a long, busy day, or finish up a school year, or whatever it is, you get to sit back and look back like, man, I worked my butt off. I didn't get everything right. I didn't nail everything I wanted to, but just looking back at the body of work I've produced, that's all the satisfaction I need. So when I sit down and I look at my numbers, or you're looking at the scale, or you're looking at the weights, and you're looking kind of at your workout, it's hard to think of that ahead of time, but after the fact, it's so satisfying to get that feeling of like, this is what I did. And maybe I'm not winning a state title every year. I'm not on stage and competing, and I'm not winning Father of the Year awards. But at the end of the day, I've accomplished a lot, and I'm going to pat myself on the back, and then I'm going to get up and try and do it all again tomorrow.
Yeah, I think the byproduct there, it's a byproduct of effort, right? It's not always a byproduct of the results, right? If you're putting in the work, there's a good feeling about when you accomplish something, even if it's not perfect. So I also think, and I'm sure you battle this as well. It's like, where's the bandwidth, right, for everything? And, more often than not, when I look at it, the fatherhood, the career, I talked a little bit about, I'm going to call it property maintenance, right? And then time with the wife. It's, and then me time. It's like, I think there's days where I use that as a crutch. I was like, especially when it comes, I have to say, I think if anything kind of falls off out of those categories, it's the fitness piece, because it doesn't affect anybody else, right? It doesn't affect my ability to provide. It doesn't affect friends, family. It's like, I'll take it on the chin. And I think I'm becoming more and more hyper aware of, there's I'm going to butcher this quote, right? But it's, the question is asked of like, what hardship do you want? Do you want the hardship of getting up every day at 4 a.m. and having an intense workout? Or do you want the hardship of not being able to do things 10 years from now because you're out of shape, or, your lab blood numbers are no good, or whatever the case is? It's like, it's a real simple choice when you start thinking about everything you're doing today affects exactly where you're going to be in 10 years and 20 years. And, looking at what is it going to be 45 or 50 years old. When we were working out at KPF, or, 5-6 years ago, that was 100 years away. Right. So the more and more I age and evolve, I really understand. It goes back to that, preconceived understanding of mortality. It's like, I'd much rather, spend my 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. doing something that's going to benefit me then, it's fun. I was talking to my son, who is 4, and I made a joke about he wants to start racing on his birthday. Like, he wants to race me on his birthday every year until, he wins. And I was like, you know what? There's no reason when he's 15, 16 that I should lose, and that's probably overconfidence and like just my inability to be vulnerable in that moment. That day is coming, right? But it's like, it doesn't have to come at 13, doesn't have to come when he's 10, right? So there's a lot of things that the more and more I look ahead, it's like, am I doing everything I can in this moment to be able to make sure that I'm preserving that, right? Because back to what you and I know very well is that, I didn't expect when I was a 12-year-old, certainly not when I was 4 or 5, to lose a parent, let alone both, right? So this is the part where I really get not frustrated with myself, but it's like, you really have to have a good understanding of like, that was terrible. Both those instances. And I would hate for anybody, let alone my own children, to have to go through an event like that. So why would I do anything other than ensure that I'm going to be there in 10 years and in 20 years? Because, while things turned out in a positive way for me from a success standpoint, I would not trade, I'd love to have both of them around to see, and be grandparents and those sorts of things. So that's where I get a little bit of self-guilt of like, I know what the reality could be if I don't, take care of myself. And, there's a lot of there's a fiery internal dialogue. And usually it's enough to drive some of that motivation to the point of like, I got to get
right along those lines. You know how everyone used to say it to us, probably at KPF and everywhere else: don't get old. And they would give us this advice of don't get old. And I would always say, I'm not going to get old. And sarcastic, like then I was like, I'll probably die before I get to be old in my mindset. My family curve isn't great. But now I'm getting old, and like right when I started to feel like peaking and started to feel like my body is starting to like, you're not doing life right, is when I was like, it's time for me. At the time I was 322, and I was, my lab numbers, like you said, were coming back bad, and my energy was bad, my sleep was bad, everything was starting to look bad. And I was like, it's time to get this under control. How many times have you heard that where they're like, don't get old?
All the time. Or don't get old, but hey, it goes quick.
Right.
Or, I used to be able to do that. I'm like, in your head, when you're 20 or 25, you're like, well, why can't you still? Like, what changed? And then, it's all about perception versus reality. Like, your reality when you're 25 is, again, you're still invincible for the most part.
Yep. And I was always in the mindset, like I said, I'm not going to get old, but I'm also, now I'm like, I have goals, I have dreams. Now that football has kind of gone away, I'm not coaching it anymore. Now I have a little bit more free time. I can focus on myself a little bit more. I'm doing the bodybuilding thing again. I guess I'm kind of looking into competing again. But after that, when it's time to hang that up, what is next? So for me, what is next is I'm going to do whatever I can to live forever and be as functional as ever, and be able to run with my kid until I'm as old as possible. I don't want to be the guy who's can't move around, can't mow his grass, can't get in and out of a car without hurting himself, because it's just, I let myself go. So like my focus after the bodybuilding or whatever my next move is done, is like, let me get my body in a position where I can be like, you know what, today I'm gonna go up and go for a jog. today I'm going to get up and race my kid on his birthday. And today I'm going to get up and do this and just keep that door open. So that's going to be my kind of my long-term focus. But my question for you, when you talk about racing your son every year on his birthday, when was the last time you sprinted?
It's been, I think it depends. Like a short burst or an actual, like I'm going to run sprints. It's been a while. I'd say it's probably been a couple of, you know what? No, sprinting. I'm like, I've cranked the treadmill up, but that's not sprinting. That's like, it's been a while for
Yeah,
sure.
I can say that with knowing mine is about 7.5 years because Logan is 7. And the last time I sprinted, the last race I ran against a high school kid was right before I started packing on weight, was sympathy weight because Logan was coming. And I won the last race I ran against the high school kid, but that was the end. And that was about 7.5, 8 years ago. And I haven't sprinted since then. I've run faster and I've done athletic things, but I don't know if my hamstrings can handle it after running them 110s all the years that we did. I don't know if my hamstrings wouldn't just explode upon the first stride.
110s against the clock, right? As freshmen, you're like, if I do this, do I make the team? Or is this like, if I'm 1 second behind where I should be? Those, those 110s were one of the first times I really felt physically where my heart was in my chest because it was just, oh my goodness, I'll never forget that.
Well, I was preparing for them and I pulled my hamstring going into freshman camp. So I was on fire. I was running with the running back groups. I was running in 15 seconds or whatever when my skill group was really like 17 or whatever the next group up was. So I was way ahead of the curve and then I had a hamstring. So I ended up just not being able to take the test and I ended up in whatever they called the club afterwards.
Yeah, that's 110s. I remember even doing 110s before camp because I think we all got packets or a book of like, this is what you should do off season ahead of the season in the summer by yourself. And then this is what training camp's going to look like. And these are workouts. And you're like, you're going to have to be able to run 110s in your certain amount of time. And it was just like, for me, I remember going up to my high school, which was, 2 blocks away and going up there and running 110-yard sprints. I'm like, I can do this in the time. How bad could it be? So running 12 of them or 15 of them back to back, whatever that ended up being was quite a challenge.
Yeah. And I remember my first time training for it. I tried to run them in succession. Like I didn't give myself a rest. I certainly wasn't giving myself the rest like between. So I was like running 1, 2, 3, 4, and then just laying down and be like, I'll never make this. And then I connected with Matt Harmon, who was a senior when we were freshmen. He was like, "You're insane. This is how you do it." And I was like, "Oh, thank God. Okay, there's a chance I might actually make
You can rest. Yeah.
He's like, "No, like 3 other position groups go between you." And I was like, "Oh, and you only have to make 12 out of 16. Oh, well, that changes everything." And then when we get there, like still people are like, "I've been training all summer for this." And they're still like after the 5th one, like throwing up, falling over themselves, passing out. Like it was, I can't imagine how much vomit is in that turf. I mean, they've
No,
redone it a couple times, but after summer workouts and camp and all that, there is so much nastiness in that turf.
absolutely. Absolutely. I remember 110s. I also remember my high school's field was grass. So there at Beeman, is it Christfield?
Yeah.
Um, it's the first time I ever got turf burn. And I was long socks and long sleeves after that because it wasn't just like, yeah, you got a brush burn with rubber pellets. It's also 93 degrees. So the ones that are stuck in your skin are slowly melting. I still have the scars from turf burn. So I was talking, I have a nephew who's starting to get into some of the, workouts around football and he's younger, but I was talking to him. I was talking to his dad a little bit about just playing on turf. Is there a difference between grass? And I was like, yeah, there's a big difference. You won't scar yourself for life if you fall down on the grass.
Everybody's shin just has looked like a patch that looks like it's been skin grafted several times.
That's it.
Have you been to Millersville's field lately?
Um, Not lately,
Have you seen it
but
since they redid the turf?
I don't think
The
so.
perimeter has a black turf, like the fake grass turf. The perimeter is black. Could you
Really?
imagine
Oh my goodness.
in August standing on the? I wouldn't even stand on the sideline. I'd be like, Coach, put me back in the drill. My shoes are melting again.
There's no feeling like the August sun on your black cleats
With a black
regardless.
uniform,
Yeah.
the black helmet. It was bad.
Yeah, we've been back to Millersville a couple times. Took the kids back, went to the store, got them, some frisbees and some Millersville gear. It was cool to just see what they've done because it's so different. I think the dorm we went to is gone.
Yeah, it's gone. Grass
Gage
patch.
Hall.
I went there. My niece graduated from there last May, so we were there like last month.
Yeah, it's always cool. We always try to at least get back to the area when we're home, just because that's where Karen and I met. I think we did our engagement photos there. So I've got I'll send you a photo of it. I got a Millersville flag hanging out in the garage. So
Yeah, I wasn't very prideful after my time was done at Millersville for football. So I mean, most of that stuff, except for the shirt, got burned, thrown away, and but since then, I've kind of again looking back at the lessons that I learned in that experience is like, man, that really made me something what I am. So I've kind of changed my mind, and Matt, now that Matt Suchek is their defensive coordinator, I know a couple of guys that are on staff, and I've connected with their coaches as they come through to recruit. I'm like a little more proud and a little more happy with the way Millersville's turning it around. I mean, they beat Westchester this year. They've had
oh,
some success
that's
this
awesome.
past year. They've taken Shepherd in their homecoming. They took them pretty far, and Shepherd went way far in the playoffs that year. So it was they're starting to do the right things. All the people that we saw get recruited in some of our classes that are getting money, and we're sitting there like, that dude doesn't show up to practice. He's got a 1 GPA. Like, how come he's getting all the money when I'm just
Sitting
so
here in management study hall, right?
right, right. So they've really done a much better job in their recruiting. They've done a much better job in the program. Coach Morgan over there has really built the family there. So I think the turnaround has been a long time coming, but it's been very good. So I'm happy to see that. Ah, man, some wild times. But anyway, that's pretty much all I have written down. So do you want to put me on the spot and all and ask me any questions?
Yeah, I just in talking to you, I mean, you referenced kind of a turning point maybe a year ago, or even less frequent than that. Um, it's real easy to make a change for me, right? But to sustain the change and keep going, what fuels it for you? Getting up at 4 a.m. What keeps you on it?
I mean, the results I'm getting is really what keeps it going. And I found kind of this corner where I can kind of so always it was when I was in bodybuilding in college and when I was in high school and even just my younger years when my metabolism was better and it was like, all right, I'm gonna start losing weight. I'm gonna lose 10 pounds. And I still have the picture. Remember when we were trying to get down to 205 by like my birthday that one time?
Yep.
So like that was easy. I could have been like, I'm dropping 5 pounds this week. I'm dropping 20 pounds in 2 weeks. Like I could have done that then and very easily just done it. Now I'm focusing more on what goes in and like how I eat, how I train, and I'm just using the results to kind of monitor it. So I'm not really like watching the scale as like my sole test, but I'm like testing my discipline and testing myself and seeing how far I can push myself. It all kind of started around a water fast I did last November where I did nothing but drink water and I didn't eat anything. And I was like, man, this is hard, but like I can do this. And it shows like all my history of playing football and all the workouts I pushed myself through and all the times when I drove myself to a workout and there was no one else there to be like, you need to do this. And I was like, I'm going to do this. It's been really fun to play and see it. And again, when bodybuilding's over, I want to be like, let's see if I can do a 5K and let's see if I can do this and let's see if I can do that and just test myself in other ways and see how far I can truly push myself. And again, there's no one else to blame. There's no one else to give credit to. It's just me looking at myself. So what keeps me going is again looking in the mirror and there's pats on the back help every now and then. You get a compliment from somebody like, hey, you're losing weight. Yeah, I am. Are you doing it on purpose? Like, yeah, I'm doing it on purpose. Lauren and I, and I think this will probably be on both episodes because I told the person I interviewed the last week on. Lauren and I went out to dinner on Friday night, and the kids, well, they went out to dinner. I just went with them because I was done my eating window for the day, and we went to a pizza place that we really like. I just had some Diet Cokes, but we sat outside, and the kids were pretty well behaved, but they're still kids, so they only lasted so long before it was like, all right, I will take them and go to the car. you finish eating since there's not a child in your lap, and then you can pay the bill and we'll get out of here. So I get up, take the kids, I get in the car, and Lauren's sitting at the table by herself, and this woman comes over from the bar, and she walks up to her and says, I just needed to tell you that you and your husband look like a Greek god and goddess.
That's awesome.
I was like, well, that's all the satisfaction I need. I'm good for another couple weeks. But then she said the conversation carried on to basically how the woman would just wanted to come up, put a smile on her face, and how she would basically, in not so many words, told my wife that she would steal me from her if she wasn't this zodiac sign. It's like, okay, have a good day. As she walked away, I was like, well, anyway. And I was like, that's really valuable. Like to just walk up and compliment somebody. Now, as a man, walking up to like a woman and saying you look incredible would be nasty and gross. But like someone to go out of the way and compliment both people was like, that's awesome. But and I don't know, man, just again seeing things like when we were in college and working out and all those pre-workouts, we were a lot leaner. So like the pumps we were getting and the vascularity we would get over like just doing some of these workouts were like hitting, like it was showing results immediately. Now I'm back to being able to, right now I'm back to be able to doing that because my body fat is under control and my sleep is incredible. That keeps me going because I'm like the positivity of changing my diet, changing my lifestyle. Like I sleep amazing again and my energy is great again, other than just downing a couple monsters throughout the day. But that's because I don't allow myself to sleep enough. So, I mean, that's really what keeps me going. And then every now and then Logan will walk up to me and be like, Dad, look. And I'm like, all right, let's go down. Let's go down right now. And he'd be like, yeah. And he'll come down and do a couple sets. And then he'll just be like, all right, I'm bored. I'm going to go back and play video games. And you're like, all right, it's fun. So, I mean, I don't know. I just like testing my own discipline and kind of seeing how far I can push myself. I'm 161 days of eating perfect. And I don't know if I'm going to push for the whole year, but I just like adding the numbers and nerding out over that.
Yeah. What do you do when your discipline wavers? Or does it? It doesn't sound like at least in the last 161 days, but I go back to that quote of like, if you don't feel like doing it, or you only act when I go back to my own example of, when I'm on it, I'm on it. But, with these set of conditions where things have to be all in order, or my discipline starts to waver.
I mean, there's for the most part, I'm so regimented in it where my alarm goes off at 3:30 and I put headphones on and I'm just going. And it's not really a thought since I've done it so much and so consistently. There's not really a thought of like, what does it look like if I don't? What is that? And like right now for cravings, I don't remember what pizza tastes like. Like I smell it. It smells amazing. I thought I was going to attack a high school kid last week because he was eating it. And I was like, it happens. But at the end of the day, like it's just routine. Like my food is all like I'm gonna cook about 4 days worth of meals today. My food is just there. I grab it, I cook and go. And it's also kind of nice to have all this stuff just routine wise locked in so that it's like I get up, I work out, I go to work, I eat my meals on time, I come home, I do this, I do that. And it's just like it's simple because it's all locked in. It's the same thing I've done. When I work with some other people outside who are like asking for nutrition advice or workout advice, it's like I give them kind of their baseline of like where they should be at for optimum gains and losses or whatever. But I'm like, let's start here and aim a little higher because you're not going to be as obsessive as I am. And I'm a little crazy. I know it, but like not everyone's going to be able to go from eating for their whole life, just however they wanted to dialing it in at 2,600 boring calories with 46 grams of fat every single day. Like that would be unfair. That would be almost impossible just for a normal person. Just like, this is the way I'm going to be forever. And I know that that day will come where I'm like, I'm good. I don't need to do this anymore. But for now, I just want to, again, see where I can get, see where I can go. And on the really tough days, I can look back at lessons that I've learned of myself. I can crank up the old Ronnie Coleman videos. I can look at the old Dorian Yates videos and just be like, all right, that's a step in the right direction. I'm good to go.
That's fantastic. And again, you referenced the routine piece, right? There's no reason not to. There's no. I think if I end this with one question, Kevin, due to our similar experiences with our dads, and we both have two little ones right around the same ages. What's your favorite thing about fatherhood?
Oh man, so much. I mean, and I'll be honest, the first 4 years of Logan's life, I was more of a football coach than a father. And that coming to realization with that really hurt and merely made me realize that having the second one, I'm not going to mess this up again. I'm going to be a present father. There's all the little memories and all the things that pop up as you sit there and kid says something goofy. Yesterday we were at a party and Mason started cursing like a sailor, and I was like, I don't know where he learned any of this. Like, that is not me or my wife, I promise you. But it was like, all right, kid knows how to curse. I think just overall, man, it's just the culmination of adding everything together. And I think it's even beyond being a father. It's just taking that 1,000-foot view of looking at like someday. And one of the reasons why these podcasts are not going to die, and maybe I get 3 viewers on each one. If something happens to me, my kids will be able to go on and know my personality by watching this video. And they can reflect on lessons from what they've learned from now. And they can talk to my mom, and they can talk to my wife, and talk to everyone they know and learn more about me. So I'm just putting myself out there. But when I take that 1,000-foot view, it's all about just, again, giving back, being that support system, and being the strength that these kids need. And in today's society where everyone's locked in behind a computer screen or locked in behind their phone, and everyone's afraid of confrontation because it's easier to text about than talk about it. Like, there's so many things that these kids are at such a disadvantage for experiencing life that I'm like, I'm going to give them every dose of reality that they deserve. And I don't know if there's one single moment. Like, it's just everything coming together. I mean, that birth was pretty amazing. The first one, Logan, but even the second one, like when a kid that I produced, and they look both just exactly like me. So it's no
They
mystery.
sure do.
But when that kid pops up and then they start to grow into their personality a little bit, and they start to get feelings, and they start to get the funny senses of humor, it's like, man, this is awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just for me, it's looking at watching your kids turn into good people, right? Even at 4 and 8, you see genuine decisions or genuine care, concern, or compassion for somebody else in situations where it's like, is that a learned behavior or is that their personality? So I think just watching them grow, and then marginally, right? 8's different than 7, different than 6. And when you look back, like, man, feels like last week my 8-year-old was 3, totting around trying to figure out, what toy we were going to play with today. And here we are getting ready to gear up for gymnastics meets and things like that. So, I mean, it took me a while to realize how cool being a dad is. Yeah. So it's good to hear your thoughts and perspective on it.
Yeah, man. Anything else?
I'm good. No, I appreciate you having me on. I think even through this, we got a nice catch up, which we're probably overdue for. But I appreciate, appreciate you being there. Whether it's a random question or a random thought or I was like, Kevin's gonna understand this meme or this situation or this song, that was on a soundtrack of something that we used to watch or listen to 10 years ago. It's just, it's always good. It's always good to connect with you, even if it's not as frequent as I think we'd both like it to be.
Right. Yeah, I definitely need to come up to Columbus for the Arnold Sports Fest or something.
Let's make it happen.
All right, man. Well, it's good talking with you, and we'll talk again soon, man.
Always. Thanks again. Take care.
Later.